Welcome to the Never Ending Backlog podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never Ending Backlog.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Never Ending Backlog podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and today we'll be reviewing The Occupation. So this was a recent Fanatical bundle purchase that I just made, that I believe I got when I purchased Iron Marines, which I already reviewed. I was able to choose which games I wanted, and it seemed to have a cool art style, plus received relatively good reviews, so it's worthy of a backlog conquest, which I'm conquering pretty early. It's not sitting back there very long. The game is developed by White Paper Games, who also created Ether, while Humble Games is the publisher, and is an offshoot of the Humble Bundle store, which I often promote, and has their name tied to games such as Temtem, Void Bastards, Aegis Defender, and quite a few more, actually. It's growing pretty fast. So The Occupation is a first-person investigation game set in northwest England in 1987. The graphics use the Unreal Engine, which is relatively smooth. However, I must admit the game is quite buggy regarding gameplay, but not the graphics. It's actually a pretty nice running game. When loading the game, it correctly positioned itself in the middle monitor of my triple monitor setup. Unfortunately, after the initial load, it then windowed itself, the game, to the top far right corner, and in the resolution settings, it showed that I was running at 5760 by 1080, which clearly was not. After resetting it to 5760 by 1080, it then basically flashed and did stretch it out. Unfortunately, some parts of the movie was single screen, other parts were super stretched, and overall I just ended up changing it to 1920 by 1080 as it worked better. From that point on though, I had no issues. It does not have a user interface that you'd expect, just basically a reticle where you can click. So you might get a little motion sickness from this. I actually did, which is unusual because even like VR games, no motion sickness, but this one I did. I would change the default frames per second from 30 to at least 60. I actually bumped mine up to 120, and this did help a significant amount. Plus, it made it look much better when you do that, and it flowed really smooth. The first, I don't really want to call it a bug. I don't think it's a bug. It's just a little thing they require to do, and it's just really frustrating. This game clearly has a set order of operations. It's basically an adventure game, but it's first person, but it's not a shooter. So, for example, at the very first part of the game, your character goes through an open window. Once you're in the room, you're attempting to interact with items, doors, etc., but nothing is clickable. And you see items that are clearly clickable. You see like IDs and papers, and you're like, I know I'm supposed to be able to click this, but I just can't figure out how to do this. In order to do this, and this is the weirdest part, you have to jump on the table by the window that you just crawled through. Then you look at the window, and you use your left mouse button because that's your interaction button, which in most shooter games, it's like an E or something along the lines of like an E button. You basically put the E as the interaction button. So that threw me off quite a bit. And I know since this is not a first-person shooter, you really don't have a need for the left mouse button anyway. So it makes sense that would be your action button. It's really odd to get used to. But anyway, you use the left mouse button to click the window. There was no dialogue saying that you should click the window. You just figured it out by clicking it and it started to move. And then you slowly and manually close the window with S and W. S goes down, W goes up. So, but another weird thing is you actually can't close it all the way. Or at least I couldn't. I could only close it to about like a couple inches, and there's still about a foot open. So I'm not sure why you even bother doing it at all. But once you do that, you can then go into the room and explore and interact with all these different items that you couldn't with earlier. So it's like it basically started the game, but it didn't really require you to do that. It's just it's kind of a broken part of the game. Your characters, because there are more than one character, they have items like a briefcase, a watch, a pager. According to the Steam store description, it says The Occupation is a fixed-time investigative thriller. Therefore, I likely wasted a ton of time with that window. So, yeah. Whoops. The really cool thing about this game, and I really do enjoy it, is you're controlling this character, but the person is the voiceovers are very well done. You can tell they're actual actors and actresses. They're very, very well versed. And they basically narrate it as like a story, like, and then I walked for hours, it seemed, and I just could not believe that this happened. And you're doing it as they're narrating it. So it does add this storyline dynamic that I really like. I did notice that it is very much so a fixed time investigative thriller. In a later level, they basically say you have a meeting at like 4 o'clock and you get there at 3 o'clock. And the time actually went with like the time there. So it wasn't time in like real life and what I'm experiencing now, but it was like I get there at 3 o'clock and I literally had to wait an hour. I don't know if it would have sped up if I would have done stuff, but I don't think it would have. So it was like, whew, you better have some time to dedicate this to the game, because you go an hour early to a meeting, you have to waste an hour. And I'm sure it goes along with the storyline where you're supposed to investigate stuff and so on and so forth. But like I said, having the characters narrate the story does add a sense of drama to the situation. When you played as Carson, the very first woman, she did an excellent job of adding tension to the game, which I thought was really nice. One tag for this game is that it's an immersive sim, and I would absolutely agree with that. The pre-title gameplay is quite a thriller moment, and overall is really enjoyable and gripping. I do not follow politics. This is kind of a political game. However, the game does do a good job mixing suspense and action, preventing a dry topic. I mean, this seems like it could be like a Netflix show, personally, and I'd probably watch it. As mentioned, controls are relatively easy. You get used to the left mouse button being your action relatively quickly, and there are a lot of items you can interact with. I'm not sure if I'm actually meant to interact with all these, or if this is something along the predestination life format, where the storyline will go in the direction whether you interact with 1 or 100 auxiliary items. And considering I spent some time reading notes in the garbage that weren't really integral to the storyline, I feel that extra actions are more for the environment, offering a deeper lore into the storyline. So it was kind of interesting. Like I said, there's a ton of stuff you can click. You can click phones, you can make outgoing phone calls, you can open doors, you can open drawers, you can do all kinds of interaction, but none of them really played a role to complete in the first level. I did see in the Community Content Center in Steam that there was a 4K video gameplay video, which I think this game would do well in. It's a virtual reality video, I should say, where they play this game in virtual reality. And this is very much that type of game. It's not like a super action game, but it does have, that thriller aspect to it. If you're a big fan of storyline-rich games, then this is a no-brainer to get. There are a few bugs and weird actions from time to time. However, they seem to resolve themselves without the need of restarting the game. You are required to sneak around from time to time from guards, so it does offer that suspense that you're looking for. And you are in direct control of your characters. This is not a point-and-click adventure game, which was refreshing. It somewhat reminds me of those classic first-person adventure games like the Titanic exploration game, Myst, those series, and those type of games where you have direct control of your characters. And where the reticle is what you're basically interacting with. So like that little crosshair is what you interact with. There is a great 80s soundtrack that is original. The controls are really smooth, like I mentioned, once you get used to them. And the graphics were fine once you tuned them. The defaults were basically awful, though. So look at your settings. Like if the game looks really awful, look at your settings, because it probably defaulted to some really terrible settings, unfortunately. I will recommend this game, as it did catch my attention from time to time, and for a topic, politics, that I don't really care much about, with a game that is based in the first person, yet doesn't have me holding a weapon of some sort, then I would say that's probably recommendable enough that it caught my attention. I'll probably play it for a little bit longer, see what the storyline's all about. I think I was reading that this is not an actual storyline, like this isn't a real thing that happened. That's like alternate universe kind of thing, but it's not alternate universe and like, robots took over London. It's very, oh yes, this could be realistic kind of a thing. And it might actually be a real story. I'm pretty sure it's not though. But overall, really cool storyline, really well written. The voiceover actors were really well done. The graphics were pretty and clean. There was a lot of interactivity action items that you can do, which I thought was nice. Offered some differences in the game. And overall, that was The Occupation. Like I said, I think I bought it on Fanatical. I believe it is on sale currently. Definitely check it out.